Lida Husik, and she is a graduate of our Breathing Deeply Yoga Therapy Advanced program. Hi, Lida.
Hello.
And I'm so happy we're here because we're going to talk about a client you worked with in the practicum, so people can hear a little bit about how you work and the work we do here at Breathing Deeply. So why don't you give us a little overview of who you worked with and maybe how you met them in the intake, and then we'll talk a little bit about the practices that you gave them and how the sessions went, and then how your client kind of did with the whole thing. So
Okay, great.
That's our thing today.
Okay.
All right,
Okay.
go ahead.
So Bill is a 50-year-old man with autism spectrum disorder, and I met him. I started working with an agency that works with adults with autism, and I became their yoga therapist. And I first met him. He was very very stiff physically, and overweight, um, and it's a spectrum for a reason. People are on different places on that. And he was verbal. He was a lot more communicative than other people I've worked with. And so when I actually did the joint freeing series, after doing an intake that focused on his any sensitivities he might have, which are really common with ASD, meaning sensitive to light or sound or touch. So that would determine the space we work in and how that would go.
And what were his particular sensitivities?
None. So when I asked him what his thing was, what his main issue was, he said extreme depression, which made me really sad, but also that's a really common comorbidity with ASD. So I decided to focus on, he had some knee issues after, I saw in the joint freeing series. So I decided just to focus on strengthening the knee structures and helping with depression. So with ASD, it's a lot easier to view the person in the context of the koshas rather than the doshas, because the communication issues might prevent them from you to really get a bead on their personality and stuff. So everyone.
So normally you might do it with the Ayurvedic kind of assessment, but you went with like a more koshic assessment, which if you're listening and don't know what that is the different aspects of the self. So the physical versus the energetic versus the mental, etc.
So having said that, I did focus, if you had to break it down in the doshas, it would be kapha because of the depression. So we started with some very simple half sun salutations, some warriors for the knee strength. And I noticed that the first time I worked with him, that getting down onto the floor was almost impossible. It took him a really long time to get down onto the floor. And so I went to the practicum and I mentioned that, and you mentioned that, well, why does he have to be on the floor? So we started to do standing postures, and I usually start with Tai Chi and Qigong moves, like warm-ups with everyone, but especially good for ASD because it's very simple to, have someone do this, and is also very vata balancing, I think, and is a sort of a meditation and movement in and of itself. So at the beginning, to get the person to be relaxed, we start with that. And then we did the standing stuff, half sun salutations and the warriors. And then we moved to his bed. And he did lying down stuff. He did bridge on his bed and then lying twists. And then I would do yoga nidra. And so with ASD, I really stuck to, it's all about sameness, routine. Like it's hard to, you want to be really slow with introducing new practices.
Mm-hmm.
So we stuck to that.
So you did the same. So you came up with this kind of protocol, which, as you're explaining it, is basically asanas, some yoga nidra, which is like a meditative experience, but guided. and you used the bed, which was smart. And then you came back and did the same thing. Is that kind of how you did
We
it with
kind of
him? Or?
we kind of did the same thing. And I should say that I've been working with him for over a year. So this is a long kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we did the same thing, routine for quite a while. And then I would gradually start doing some pranayam in there after the asana, and then going into the meditation stuff.
And did he enjoy it? Was it hard for
Oh my
him?
God,
Like
he really
what's
loved
been the
it.
experience over the year? So he loved it right away?
Oh, he sends me the sweetest like texts afterwards. Thank you so much. Um, and I'll just encapsulate our progress, because I did introduce different things just to see what would stick over the period, and of course, it was made more complicated with COVID. So after a while, we decided to just work via Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
So even though as a person working with developmentally disabled people, I was considered essential, so I was able to still work with him. But the masks were kind of limiting, with breath work and stuff. And so we're still working on Zoom now, and it kind of limits, some progress because he was doing like down dog prep with me when we were in person, just on a chair, just holding onto the chair and stretching. He loves that. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm not comfortable instructing him not in person. I really needed
So
to see his
so you
down
had to be
dog.
more careful with him on
Yeah, so
Zoom.
it's
Yeah.
slowed down the progress a little bit, but I will say that I really feel like he's blossomed over the year.
Yeah, could you maybe give us a little like sort of summary of, so you've done asana and breathing practices and some meditative practices
Meditation,
and
mantra. I've introduced
uh,
many different little things,
hmm. And can
and
you could you sort of summarize like
the progress.
how it, yeah, like how it's benefited him?
I'll tell you this: he gets down onto the floor really well now, and we do floor work now,
Mm-hmm.
lying floor work, and he also, like another person I know, went on a hike with him, and he told that person, like, I could never have walked a full hour before doing yoga.
Wow.
So that really made me
And
feel
then
good.
what about the depression?
I mean,
Did
he has
it
really
help?
kind of, I really think so, because he's doing a lot of social things now with other support providers and
Mm-hmm.
being out in the community more. And he's a lot more verbal with me, a lot more relaxed, and he's lost weight. And we used to practice tree at the wall when I was seeing him in person. Now we do it in the middle of the floor. I mean, he's not great at lifting up the foot much, but he practices it, and kind of like falls over and stuff.
Yeah.
But he's made a lot of progress, I see.
So
And
he's more social. So you can see he's less depressed because he's,
oh yeah,
signs of depression are the opposite of that, I guess.
yeah.
Is he able to say, "Oh, this has really helped me with my depression," or is that not how you
Yeah,
communicate?
I've asked him, like,
Hmm.
do you think this is helping in general in your depression? And he says, yeah, I think so. It really
Yeah,
has.
great.
Yeah.
So in a year, um,
I should also add that when I first met him, he had some verbal tics that are very common. Like he
sure.
would say, don't you know? Like he'd introduce that in a sentence, like a lot. I
Hmm.
haven't heard that in a long time. He never says
Oh
that
wow,
anymore. He has a lot more fluid speech. Um,
wow.
yeah, and I'm not going to take the full credit. I'm sure he's working with other providers and he has a family near him and stuff. But in general, I really feel that the yoga has helped him immensely.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I know that this is a population you like to work with, and
Mhm.
um, I think what struck me with you working with this case is that a lot of people, if they started to work with somebody with ASD, they sort of see them as a diagnosis. And I just thought you did like a really good job seeing them as a person and modifying practices for him specifically versus, his condition, which is who he is. He has, he's on the autistic spectrum, but of course that's not who he is, right? So
Right.
you did a really good job with that. And, it was clear to me that he made progress in all the areas that you were looking to. So that's exciting. Do you feel like really good about the work that you've done with him? Does it feel like you really did what you came to do
I
when
really
you met him?
do. Yeah, I really do feel, because and of course, when I met him, he was meeting a stranger. So of course he's going to be more, I mean, but he just seems like a very different person from the first person I met.
Wow.
And yeah, he actually even started like dressing different and started wearing like a lot of jewelry, which he never did, which he didn't at first. So I feel
Right.
like he's kind of finding himself in a
Yeah.
way.
Amazing. Well, as the work helps him move out of depression, I would think that would be possible. So that's
Yeah, and
fantastic.
one thing that really thrills me is that he practices on his own. Like, I gave him a mala, and he does his beads and he does his stretching. If there's weeks that I can't see him, or because of his schedule, he still practices. And he just says, I just love stretching my body and I feel stronger. And so,
So great. And he's a good client. I mean, he's like
yes. Oh,
perfect
he's
for
so,
yoga
I mean,
therapy because
yeah.
he's, interested in doing it, right?
I have
So
one neurotypical client, and it's the hardest thing I've ever done.
well, maybe
It's so
that'll
different.
inspire more yoga therapists to work with people with ASD. That's awesome. And so so since he was a practicum client, um, how did you use the practicum with him? Like, how did the practicum interact with your work with him?
Well, it was, such a support. And I found that, like, in that one instance where, like, I would never have thought, like, well, he doesn't really need to be on the floor, just use the bed. That was totally life changing for our work together, because, yeah, I mean, um, it was such a smart way to gradually strengthen him so that he could get down onto the floor. And um, I mean, it's just, yeah, it was just really invaluable just to even have the community support and be able to go someplace and talk about this was amazing. And I talked about other clients too, but yeah, all of it was really, really. The only problem was that it was at 7:45 in the morning because I'm on the West Coast. So that was
Yeah, we're working
sad.
on
That
getting
was
some more
sad.
times for that practicum.
Yeah.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the community part is so important. And I just have to say, all of us that are in the practicum also benefited because not a lot of people do work, are so interested in work with people with autism. So, or on the autistic spectrum, I should say. So that's just like was really helpful. I haven't done personally a lot of work with that population, and so I learned a lot from you working, and so
Oh,
that's
good.
it's a real boon to everyone. Well,
Yeah.
thank you. You are Lida is a great student and a totally qualified yoga therapist, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you do, especially in this area with the work. So, thank you for
Awesome.
chatting with me and
Thank you.
explaining all this to everyone.
Thank you very
Om
much.
Shanti.
Om Shanti.